Hey, this is Will. So this is going to be the ultimate guide to Bangkok, Thailand as a digital nomad, or just in general if you decide to come and stay here for a little bit longer. Let's jump straight into it. First thing is community. And when it comes to Bangkok, I think it's a little bit interesting because when you look at all of the stats of digital nomads that come to Bangkok, there's supposed to be a lot of digital nomads in terms of number. However, I think because the city is just so big in terms of just the territory, in terms of population and all of that, I think digital nomads here are spread out quite a bit. I feel like I've been to places that have probably less digital nomads, but they're all concentrated in one place, so you really feel like you're living just among digital nomads. However, you do not get that same feeling when in Bangkok. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised because I'm in Bangkok right now and I've been looking through the different groups for digital nomads and things like that, and I'm kind of struggling to really find community and events and things like that. But at the same time, I do know that there are quite a few digital nomads. I've met some. I know some of my friends told me about their friends, so on and so forth. So there's definitely a community. However, you're not going to find, I would say, as many events as you might expect in such a huge city. And that might also be because Thailand, again, Bangkok just opened back up pretty recently, so that might be one of the reasons. But in general, you can find a lot of cool people, and the thing as well about Bangkok, differently from some of the other places, is that a lot of people come here to just live here. They have jobs here, and you can actually meet a lot of expats that live here long term and that are not just here for holiday. And at the same time, you can also find a lot of locals that do speak English. They might be also building some sort of businesses. Interesting people, basically, because you do have huge population of over 10 million people, so obviously there's going to be some cool people out there. Second thing is accommodation, and this is pretty interesting when it comes to Bangkok, I have to say. I think it's kind of interesting because when you go to, for example, Europe, so I just came back from Europe. I was in Budapest, my last country there, and in Budapest they had all of these different apartments that look completely different in terms of shape, size, and all of that. And that's the thing, because these apartments, some of them, they have been built 100 to 200 years ago and they are just being restorated. Whereas in Bangkok, technically, I guess you can find old built apartments, but most of the apartments that most likely you're going to end up staying at, they are completely new built. And what that means is that most of the apartments look pretty much exactly the same. So I would say, whereas, for example, in Europe, you have an option, if you want, you can take a little bit older building and you can have more spacious apartment for the same price, or you can take a newer and a little bit smaller building. In Bangkok, I would say it's all just going to be sort of one option, and that is it. And because the city is so crowded, I would say that apartments are fairly small. And this is where it becomes a little bit interesting as well, because technically, if you want to find cheap accommodation in Bangkok, you can definitely find really cheap accommodation. I've seen some postings. If you're here long term, you can find something for as cheap as $400 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, and it does depend quite a lot. So if you are renting for 1 year, no one really does monthly rent here, so you need to either do 1 year contract or you need to go through Airbnb. If you do 1 year contract, you probably can get half price. So this is where I say that you can find an apartment for as cheap as $400 a month. That is actually a new apartment. It's not going to be huge or anything like that, but a completely new one-bedroom apartment. And if you go through Airbnb, I would say it's probably going to be almost double the price for the same type of apartment. And the one thing what I meant was that most of the apartments, there, let's say you have one bedroom, you have sort of the living room connected to kitchen, and it's pretty much the same everywhere. So the only thing that makes it different is location and the different amenities. So how big is your pool? Do you have multiple pools? How good is your gym? Do you have a co-working space? Do you have maybe like a driver with your building that can take you to the mall, to the BTS, to all of those different things? Basically, all of these different amenities plus the location is sort of the only thing really that I would say differentiates these apartments, because other than that, they more or less all look the same. So if you're going through Airbnb, the option that I'm using here, I would say that if you want to get an apartment that is this typical, let's say around 40 square meters, it's going to be somewhere, I would say it can start from as little as $600, but again, depending from location and amenities, I would say look at the range from 600 to 1000, maybe to 1200 if you want a little bit nicer location. And then if you want something that is quite a bit bigger, that's sort of the thing about Bangkok, what at least I noticed from looking at Airbnb. You either have these options that I just mentioned, or then if you want something that has, let's say, an extra sort of room, so you have, let's say, a living room, a kitchen, and a bedroom, all of sort of separated, a little bit bigger, that is going to probably cost you on Airbnb at least a couple $1,000s, or maybe even a little bit more than that. By the way, I'm going to leave all of the information always updated, so do check out all of the links in the description. Also, make sure to check out my main YouTube channel and check out my social media for some quick and actionable marketing tips. All right, next we got food. So I personally absolutely love Thai food, and I think pretty much everyone I've met loves Thai food. It can get a bit spicy, but also you can always ask them to make it not as spicy for you. So when it comes to Bangkok, it's pretty amazing. You have a lot of different options. So obviously you have the Thai food, which honestly, you can find some local places, or if you, for example, you go to the mall, they have food carts there. You can get a meal for as little as $2, and it's a good, decent, very tasty dish. However, if you want to go for Western food, then do expect to pay more. And I would say I've been before to the different islands in Thailand. I've been to Chiang Mai up in the north, and I think Bangkok is a little bit more pricey, but again, there are so many different options out there. In general though, I would say if you want Western food, for example, if you want a burger, it's probably going to be somewhere between like $7 to $10. A pizza is maybe like a $10. If you want a beer, it's probably going to be maybe $3 to $4. If you want a cocktail, that's maybe around $7, but it kind of depends, because for example, last weekend I went to a bar and a cocktail was $15. So it really depends quite a lot. Where exactly do you go? Again, there's such a big contrast between all of the different neighborhoods, and even within neighborhoods you have a lot of different options. So it depends if you go to maybe like a very expensive business neighborhood, or if you go to, for example, where all of the backpackers, the tourists are, it's going to be a completely different contrast. Oh, and by the way, there is Grab and Food Panda for food delivery, and they seem to work really well, even if it rains. Even if your ride is late, if it rains, they actually give you a voucher. So I do order food quite a lot. They do have a lot of options. Now, co-working spaces. So when it comes to co-working spaces, there are quite a few different ones around the city. However, I think as in many countries, when you go to a big city that has big local population and local businesses, you will find some co-working spaces that basically just have You will find some co-working spaces that basically just have Thai businesses, and that is it. So you do want to maybe look up before you actually book your accommodation. If you want to join a co-working space, just look up a little bit of who exactly it seems like are in that co-working space, because you might not want to be in a space where it's just Thai companies and no one's really socializing that much because you're a foreigner. But there are some co-working spaces that have sort of a mix of local Thai people and other digital nomads that have sort of same interests, so you can have that social aspect of a co-working space as well. And on average, I would say the co-working spaces, they look pretty good, and they're pretty cheap actually. They are only, I would say, maybe on average $140 per month. So I think that is very good value for what you are getting. Next, we got transportation. So technically in Thailand and Bangkok, you have buses, but honestly, I've never used a bus, so I don't even know how they work. You have BTS, which is actually pretty good compared to a lot of different cities. So it depends where exactly you're going, because a lot of things might just happen on one BTS line. So if you're staying on that line, it might just make sense for you to take the BTS and go a couple stops and that's it. Sometimes traffic is actually really bad in Bangkok, so sometimes BTS might be even faster or same speed as taking a cab during rush hours, especially when it is raining. So, and BTS, I would say, what they call here, metro, is pretty fast, I would say. I think it's faster than I remember back in the day taking the subway in London, and I would sometimes need to wait 10-12 minutes. Here I think you get a metro every maybe 3 to 4 minutes. I mean, usually I just take Grab, which is the Uber of Southeast Asia. So Grab is very cheap here, I would say. In general, if you're driving, I would say somewhere between maybe 10, 15, maybe even 20 minutes, it's going to be somewhere around $5. So that's what usually, whenever I took Grab, that's all that I paid. Maybe if I really needed to go far away, the max I've paid was maybe $8, maybe $9, and that's pretty much crossing the whole city of Bangkok. So it's really very, very cheap. And another thing they do have is you can also get Grab bike. So if you're just one person, you can jump on the back of a bike. And I know that might not seem as comfortable, but during those rush hours, a bike is actually much faster than a car because they can just go through the side. So it actually is more convenient in that sense, and it also is much cheaper option. It costs maybe 1/3 of what a taxi costs. By the way, if you don't want to use Grab for some reason, you can always find taxis around the city, and again, they do have car taxis and bike taxis all around the town as well. Now, going out. So going out in Bangkok, I think Bangkok is sort of known as a crazy city for going out, and they recently legalized cannabis here as well. So I think that's inviting even more people that want to come and party and whatnot. So you do have quite a big party scene in Bangkok. And again, they do have, because of the scope of the city, they do have all of the different options out there. You do have some super fancy clubs, you do have some backpacker streets with just crazy bars, super loud music, just complete madness. You do have some very chill restaurants and bars and very fancy stuff, and stuff with plastic chairs where you pay $2. You can pay $2 for a beer, and at the same time you can pay $7-8 for a beer. So the difference here is really quite a bit. So it's kind of hard to say whether going out price wise, whether it's expensive or it's cheap, because it really depends on where you choose to go out. Now, in terms of options, as I mentioned, there's a ton of options, and there's also some events. So they have some pool parties, you have parties on boats and things like that. So there's definitely quite a few different things that you can do. Now, let's talk general goods. So in general, I would say most of the things are fairly cheap. Obviously, if you're looking at Western, for example, food products, obviously cheeses, good meats, things like that, they are imported, so they are quite a bit pricier. Also alcohol, Western alcohol as well, Western brands. they are a little bit more pricey than they are at least in Europe. However, when it comes to other things, I would say I don't really see that much of a difference. And if you are looking to buy clothes and all of those kind of things, if you are a girl, it's different for guys. For guys, at least I haven't seen that many options of just these sort of vendors. They have these vendors everywhere, whether it's on the streets or actually even within the malls. You have your normal proper stores, but at the same time, you also just have these vendors that are selling all of the different outfits and whatnot. And you can literally, as a girl, you can literally grab a dress for $3, $5. It's insanely cheap. I haven't done the shopping. I don't know what the quality is like, but I do know that if you want some local stuff in terms of clothes and things like that, then it can be very, very cheap. Other than that, obviously, you have all of the different international brands as well. And price-wise, I think the international brands are priced pretty much the same as they are in the West. Next, we got climate. So basically from, I believe, November until around April, you have the dry season, and then you have the rainy season in Bangkok. And I am here right now actually during the rainy season, and there's a reason why that is the case. Usually I don't like rainy seasons, but there is a reason. And I've been here before just for a visit during dry season as well, so I can kind of compare it a little bit. So during pretty much whole year round, Bangkok is hot. So it's going to be somewhere between 30 to 34 degrees Celsius, meaning around 86 to, I believe, 92 Fahrenheit. And at night, the temperature drops a little bit, so it's around 25 to 26 Celsius and around 77 degrees Fahrenheit. So during the dry season, I think the city does get pretty hot from what I remember, because again, there's just so much happening within the city. It's just so crowded, and you have so much traffic, so many people, you have the tall buildings, so you don't even get really that much of a breeze, so it can get quite hot. But during rainy season, the nice thing is, even though it rains quite a lot, the weather does cool down after the rain, so it's not as bad, I have to say. And one thing as well you have to understand is that if you plan to come here during rainy season, similar as most of the places in Southeast Asia, it just has this tropical rain and then it kind of stops. So it's not that it's just drizzling throughout the day. Usually, I've been here now for a couple of weeks, and it seems that you usually have some sun in the morning, and then in the afternoon it rains a bit, it stops, it rains a bit, it stops. So that's kind of what you can expect, more or less. And I know when you hear the temperature, it might sound a little bit extreme, it might sound a little bit scary, but at the same time, you do have to take into consideration that a lot of times, depends what exactly you do in Bangkok, but a lot of times you're going to be indoors. So it depends where you go. If you want to go for, let's say, very cheap, like restaurants, street food and things like that, then obviously those things, they're going to be outside, you're not going to have aircon. But for all of the other stuff, when you go shopping, and most of the restaurants, the cafes, all of those places, they all always blast aircon, they love aircon. So honestly, I don't really feel the heat that much, because I honestly don't really spend that much time just outside. Next, we got internet, and pretty much anywhere in Thailand, I think, and in Bangkok the same. You do have really good speeds, so you might not, I don't know if you can get 1 gigabyte. I think maybe max is 300 megabytes right now, but yeah, usually it's somewhere between like 100 and 300 megabytes. It really depends where exactly you are working from and all of that, but in general, I wouldn't really have many complaints when it comes to internet. And also, you can get mobile data that is very cheap. I don't quite remember, I think maybe I paid $10 or $20 or something like that, and you get unlimited data that is not the fastest per se, but you still can do most of the things. Next, we got safety. So honestly, I haven't really heard of that many bad things when it comes to safety in Bangkok. I would imagine that it's a huge city and things still happen, but in general, from my other experience in Thailand as well, I do know that it's fairly safe. You might encounter some pickpocketing or something like that, but I would say in general, it seems like a pretty safe place. So now we got costs, everything in general. So as I mentioned, it really depends so much on how much money you spend on accommodation, like what is the location where you want to stay, what amenities you need, all of those kind of things. In general, by the way, if you want to go to the gym, a gym here is going to cost somewhere between, I would say, $30 to $50, maybe $60, so it's pretty cheap for what you get. If you want to do other activities, other different sports, in general, I would say the costs are also pretty low. They're going to be lower than in the West. If, for example, you want to go play tennis, or you want to go rock climbing, or you want to go see a movie, something like that, I would say it's not crazy insanely cheap or anything like that, but the costs are definitely going to be a little bit cheaper than the West. So I would say if we look at, okay, what is the bare minimum that you need in Bangkok, Thailand, I would say you probably need at least $1,200 if you're going to get that very simple apartment and you're going to eat a lot of just local Thai food, and maybe you're going to cook at home, use BTS, things like that, but you still can have actually a fairly good life. Like, I mean, in terms of like, if you would take that money and you would spend that in the West, you really wouldn't get that much. If you actually want to be more comfortable, then I would say you probably want to spend maybe around $2,000 if you want to have a little bit better apartment and better location and eat some more Western food and go out and spend money and things like that. But again, obviously this really depends on where exactly you are spending your money, but hopefully you got the general idea. By the way, in general, I would say that if I compare Bangkok to, for example, if you've been to Chiang Mai, then I would say it's definitely more expensive than Chiang Mai. Maybe I would say somewhere around 40% more expensive. And if you look at the islands, I would say it's probably a little bit more expensive as well. But once again, you have so many different options to choose from, so it really depends on your own choosing how much money you end up spending here. Now let's talk about visas. So I think for most of the countries, do double check before coming here, but most of the countries, I think you get 30-day free visa, so you can just show up and that is it. And if you want, you can extend that 30-day to another 30 days, so 60-day in total. You just need to go to immigration, fill in a couple of papers. It's actually a very simple process, and I don't remember exactly. I think that was maybe around $20-30, something like that, maybe 50, but it's really not that expensive to do the extension. And then if you want to do a longer term visa, I'm honestly not 100% sure of all of the different options out there, but I do know that one of the things that some people do is you can basically get a visa that, let's say you are learning a language or you are learning a sport, for example Muay Thai. It's very popular to do that here, so you can get a visa that's obviously going to cost quite a bit more, and a lot of times that might include actual classes, so it might actually be worth if you do want to, for example, learn Muay Thai, and in that case you can stay for a whole year. Other than that, you also have your retirement visas, and they are also making a digital nomad visa. I'm not sure whether they already released that or not, because these things, people always talk about these things happening, but it always takes forever. Next, we got English. So once again, because it is such a massive city, you have so many different people. You have some very poor people and you have some very rich people. So there's a huge contrast of who you are going to meet. In general, I would say most of the people, they're not really going to speak English, but you can find actually, like I would say, a fairly good chunk of Thai people that are going to speak English, especially if you go to co-working spaces and things like that. The younger generation, you can find people that speak English. In general, I would say I don't really struggle here with the language, but at the same time, don't expect everyone out there to be speaking English. So overall vibe, as I mentioned, Bangkok is a huge crowded city, a ton and a ton of people living here. You can find all of the different kind of people, a bunch of people that come to travel here, people that actually live here for many years, that have office jobs, you have digital nomads, you have all of the different local people, so on and so forth. And once again, you have the super posh places, you have the super simple places. So the overall vibe is really that you have pretty much everything out there. The only thing I will say you're guaranteed is that it's going to always be crowded. It's crowded, it's noisy, it's probably not the clearest weather, and it's pretty hot. So there are those things that do keep those in mind. But in general, I do like the vibe of Bangkok because, again, you just have a lot of different things to do, a lot of interesting things to do. So you can come here for at least a couple of months and just try out all of the different restaurants, cafes, and things like that, and you will not get bored. So hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, do leave them in the comments section. Make sure to check out my main YouTube channel. Also check out my social media, my Instagram, my Twitter, for some quick and actionable marketing hacks. If you found this useful, make sure to smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, put on those notifications. Stay awesome, and I'll see you soon.